Hello, welcome to Leaving California and Life After California. Today we are moving to Houston, Texas. So with that in mind, can you touched upon Sugarland, and I know you've kind of touched upon the geographic areas. Out here in California, we're used to, okay, if I work in downtown San Francisco, I get in my car and I drive on the freeway and I drive out as far as I have to where I can afford a home. If that's 75 miles away and that's the home I can afford, because there's no homes between there and San Francisco that fit my budget. I have to drive that far out. But it sounds like in these different areas, there actually are more homes or older neighborhoods where the homes are more affordable versus just having to pick. I work in downtown Houston. I'm driving 75 miles outside of Houston. I'm going to be in my car for 3 hours each way. It doesn't sound like Houston operates that way, or Texas in general, for that matter.
I'll answer that for you. So even if I take downtown as a nucleus of Houston, and if I go outside of downtown, I can buy a single family home about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet in the 300 to 400 price range. Okay, that's possible. Now, if I want to get more for my money, if I want to get a bigger home in $300,000-$400,000, I drive 20 minutes south, east, west, north, or any direction. So as I get further out from Houston downtown, my money will go further out. So for example, if I drive 20 to 30 minutes south of downtown, which is if I get to a suburb called Sugarland, or I go to Katy area, I can buy a 3,500 square feet home for about $400,000. Okay, the same home as I come closer to downtown will go from $400,000 to maybe $600,000 to $700,000. So that's a kind of a variance of the price point that we have in Houston area.
That makes sense. Let me backtrack just a little bit here. You mentioned that your taxes are dropping each year as far as the percentage. What I would feel is that because your values are going up, do they keep raising the value of your home so that you're still paying the same taxes? Or is there, I know you're a non-disclosure state, and maybe people don't know what that means. If you can explain what being a non-disclosure state means, and are they raising your values just so you keep paying the same amount of taxes or even more on your property?
Absolutely, I'll answer both the questions. So let me first clarify what non-disclosure means. So I'm sure everyone has heard about Zillow. When you go to Zillow.com, there's something called Zestimate. Okay, and you can do the Google search about this. What Zestimate is that they estimate the values of homes in your area. And the way they determine the value of homes in your area is they look at the public record or public information about the value of your home, what you paid for, how much you owe on the home, what the mortgage is. And they say, well, homes in this zip code, this area, are valued as this. And that's why Zillow, when you look at Zestimate, they tell you this home is priced 20% over market or under market. So the states which openly share the values of homes have more openness or clarity to Zillow.com. But Texas is a non-disclosure state. What that means is if I go and buy a brand new home today, or even if I buy a resale home, what will be known in the public record is what I took the mortgage for. So if I buy $1 million home, if I borrow $500,000, that's what will be known. But what I actually paid for the home is not public information. That's why when you look at Zestimates on Zillow.com, Texas, Houston gets a very, very low rating, which means the accuracy of Zestimate is very, very low. But if you go to Boston area, the accuracy rate is very, very high because they disclose what it is. So that's what non-disclosure means. Now, the second part of the question was, your tax rate may be dropping, but are you paying more and more in taxes every year? To give an overlying answer, yes, the values do go up, and we do tend to pay more in taxes, but that is with any part of the world, anywhere in the country, anywhere you go. If you have to pay taxes on your home, if the values go up, you expect to pay more taxes on that appraised value. Now, again, Houston or Texas area has one more aspect, which is called homestead exemption. By the way, do you have that in California area, Terry?
I believe they take $7,500 off the value of your home. So that's about it.
Okay, so I kind of give a very important aspect of homestead exemption. So for example, if I buy a home and I owner occupy the home, and that's my primary residence, Terry. So what that means is I can apply for homestead exemption. So just for easy numbers, if the tax rate in my area is 3%, if I apply for homestead exemption, my tax net rate gets dropped from 3% to approximately 2.8%. So I actually get a tax break when I have homestead exemption. The other value or benefit of having homestead exemption is that, God forbid, if I go into foreclosure or if I have financial distress, my primary home will always be protected. The creditors cannot come after my primary residence. That's a second advantage of having homestead exemption. But a third one, which relates to values going up, is that they cap how much appreciation your value can go up every year. So I'll give one more one-on-one. One is appreciation of your home based on market value. And second one is appreciation of your home value based on the appraisal district, okay? So if my home's value in the market is $1 million, that does not mean the appraisal district would have said it's $1 million. It probably is going to be slightly lower because that's what I'm paying taxes on. So every year I have the opportunity to dispute the appraised value of my home. And I'll talk about that process as well. But to answer your question, if I buy a home, owner occupied, homestead exemption applied, and let's just say I buy the home for $1 million, next year, even if the market goes really up, appreciates by 20, 30%, the most they can raise the value of my primary residence can only go up by 10%. So it can only go up from million to $1,100,000. Then next year, it can go up by a maximum $110,000, 10% every year. So the homestead exemption allows for certain parameters or predictability of what your values can go up by, okay?
All right, let's turn our attention to the weather. You've mentioned, I mean, we know that Houston gets darn hot in the summertime. You've had your share of hurricanes, but I'm sure that Houston learns from each hurricane and each event, and they make adjustments regarding flooding, regarding, you mentioned levees, and then can you kind of talk about not just the summertime, but also what it's like year-round there in Houston?
Absolutely. So I'll touch on both things. One is impact of Harvey, what that has done. And I'll talk about weather conditions. So it is a very fair statement that Houston does get hot. We get triple-digit temperatures over 100 degrees. It does get humid. But when I look at and I talk to a lot of people or clients who are thinking about moving to Houston, one key question I ask them is, well, do you really work outdoors or do you work indoors, right? And most of us either work in offices or we are in sales, we're in the field, but not sitting in the sun. Unless you're in the landscaping business, you don't spend a whole lot of time in the sun or heat. So during the day, it does get warm, it does get hot, it does get humid. But in the evenings, because we have close proximity to the Gulf of Mexico, in the evenings, we always get a cool breeze. Even in June or July, in fact, this past weekend or last weekend, 4th of July, we were sitting in the backyard, right? And we spent the whole evening doing barbecue and the breeze was pleasant. So while it does get hot and humid during the day, but evenings are always pleasant. The other aspect is if I was living in a city or state where I'm dealing with cold weather conditions, let's just say it snows. Well, I cannot deal with snow because if it's snowing outside, I cannot step outside if there's a snowstorm. But if it's hot, well, I can wear a t-shirt or wear shorts, crank up the AC, I can still step outside. So in extreme weather conditions, I think it's easier to deal with hot weather than to deal with cold weather. But when you compare the weather conditions of California, again, that is heaven. You guys have phenomenal weather conditions throughout the year. But you see, Terry, I am originally from India. I'm an immigrant, right? I believe that while I can strive to be in an area where ideal weather conditions, but if I cannot accomplish my financial goals in life and I'm paying too much money in taxes, or if I'm living in a small home or paying all the infrastructure costs, well, I didn't come to this country to have minimal success. I've come here to make a big success out of my life. And that's why I feel having low costs of living, being able to afford to buy a home when I want to buy is really great. So I'll share a true story with you. When I got my first job at Deloitte, my base salary was $48,000. And I moved to Houston. Now, $48,000 base salary will probably just get me an apartment, one-bedroom apartment for lease in California market. But when I moved to Houston, I'd saved up some money, and within 6 months, I bought a home. The first home I bought in 2003 was about a 2,600 square feet home. Brand new home. It was 4-bedroom, game room, media room, 2-story, and I paid $160,000 for it. Okay. I had a master bedroom down, 3 bedrooms upstairs. And what I did was I had some friends from college, from LSU. I brought them over, gave them each a room. They paid me rent. And they stayed with me for 5-7 years till I got married, and then I kicked them out. But what I'm trying to demonstrate to you is this. When I got a job, straight out of college, within 6 months, I had the ability of buying a home with a base salary of $48,000, $50,000. I could not have dreamt about buying a home in the California market. I mean, I probably would have to make over $500,000 in salary or income to even think about buying a home. And even if I could, I probably would buy a small condo or a small apartment. Here, I could buy a single family home, 2,600 square feet, for $160,000. So for me, while weather conditions are important, but if in life you have goals, you have ambitions, you always have to sacrifice. There's nothing perfect in life. So for me, the sacrifice was I can deal with the hot weather, I can deal with the humidity, but over the years, as a professional, now I'm in the business, I have multiple investment homes. I have invested a lot of money in real estate because I'm able to afford to buy homes, buy commercial spaces with the least amount of money that I'm making in the Texas market.
I think you make a great point, Kunal. I know when I come to Texas, I see a thriving middle class. I see restaurants full 7 days a week. I see people out in stores buying things. It's not like it is here where we're all commute poor, time poor because we commute a lot, or we are house poor because all of our equity is tied up in our home and we make these big mortgage payments and we don't have the disposable income. I mean, California over the last 5 to 10 years has eliminated the middle class. That's why so many people are leaving. If you make less than $150,000 a year, you're not really even middle class anymore because the cost of living is so high. Your description of buying a home, making less than $50,000 6 months out of college, I mean, out here, you'd have to put down $150,000 just to close on a house with 20% down in most places. So that certainly makes a lot of sense. So it's not really a trade-off. You have a much better lifestyle and a much more relaxed way of living, and a much more, you can thrive as a middle class person in Texas versus here, where if you're not wealthy, it's a rat race and it's a grind.
Correct. And great thing about Houston, Texas is we have plenty of land. We're still growing and growing and growing. Whereas California, you have limited space where more homes can be built. That's why when there's lack of supply, the demand is high and the prices keep going up. Here, like I mentioned, we're growing all around. We could go north side of Houston, south, east, west, and cities still growing and growing and growing. So when you have plenty of opportunities to build, that makes the housing market very, very robust. And you can literally, give your price tag. I mean, I had a client about 3 months back. They bought a 1-story home, about 1,800 square feet, for under $100,000. And that home was about 23, 24 miles from downtown. So it would take them in traffic 45 minutes, in no traffic about 30 minutes to get to downtown. Now, can I buy a home $100,000, under $100,000 anywhere else? Possibly not.
Certainly.